So I was explaining, this is my son a few years ago, and he's a mess, but you can also see the life and the learning. And as humans, we go through this messy life, right? It's not very clean. It's not precise like AI, and it's beautiful. So a lot of what we're talking about is that humanity and leaning to our human skills. One of the things I tell my kids, I give them these little secrets of life. And this could be something like, if you get invited to a play date or a party or to speak like I am today, say yes, because if you continually say no, you're going to stop getting invited. So that's a secret of life. Another secret of life that applies to today's talk is I truly believe the relationships are the hardest part of life. They are so hard, but they are also the most beneficial, the most fulfilling, the most worthwhile thing to do. And they're a lot of work. So secret of life for today. So let's go over these 5 principles. The first is regular communication. The second is shared decisions. The third is shared expectations. Fourth, establish rituals. And the fifth is constant iteration. So when you go through the process of using these tools, it's not a checklist. You just use the tools that you need when you need them. You create naturally over time a shared language. And with that shared language and experience becomes unity and consistency. That's the end result of applying these principles we're going to talk about today. And wanted to make a note here again, it is not a linear process. It's not check off the boxes and then you're done. You go through these over and over and over in all the different orders that you need to until you get to that point. And also, it is a long game. These things don't happen quickly. Again, you can't fast forward it, you can't rush through it. It takes time, it takes experience. So first story, blending family. This is my family. So here's my 4 adorable children. I love being a mom and I love kids. And if you look at this picture, you wouldn't know 2 of these are my biological children and 2 are my stepchildren. You wouldn't know that 2 of them are with me 50% of the time and 2 are with me 70% of the time. And you wouldn't know that 1 of them has ADHD. Also, I never anticipated being a working mom. I didn't anticipate being a divorced single mother. And I also didn't anticipate being a stepmother, right? Like life, it's messy, it's beautiful, and we learn from it. So here's what I learned using the 5 principles. So this is me. When I got divorced, I had a 3-year-old and a few-month-old baby, and we became this unit of 3. And then a couple years later, I met this man and his 2 kids, and he was a family of 3. And after we dated and talked about our goals and our life plan, we decided we should get married. We wanted the same things. So we did. And we had this vision, right? When you enter into something, you have an expectation. And we thought it was going to be like this beautiful family, right? Idyllic. 6 of us. We have a daughter and 3 boys and sparkles in the background. But in reality, it felt like this. And I'm not kidding, for like 2 years, it felt like this. So statistically, second marriages, especially with children, they don't last. A lot of people end up divorced again, and it's really hard. And it takes anywhere from 2 to 5 years to fully blend a family statistically, right? Everybody's different. And so what it felt like was this. It kind of still felt like 2 units of 3 and all these difficult emotions. There's still enough love to keep us together, but it was hard. It was really hard. And my husband and I were like, what have we planned? We talked about this. We had the same goals. Like what's going on? And we didn't have the tools. So we went to experts. Everybody that we could get access to, we went to psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, family coaches, blended family coaches, parent coaches, to try and figure out how to keep this family together and to make it good and not negative and not feel so sad all the time. And so this is what we learned from all of those experts combined. This is essentially what we learned. The parents have to be unified. Household rules and expectations need to be clear and consistent. And we need to involve the kids in decision-making when appropriate. So what was kind of happening is it was like, well, I do it this way and you do it this way. And we both ran really successful households separately, but we didn't do it the same way. So there's conflict there. And we had hundreds of these rules in our heads of how you run a household and what the kids should do. And it's really hard to verbalize hundreds of rules even before you move in. And then you move in and you're like, wait, I do it this way and you do it that way. And there's conflict. And then the kids need to be involved to make it feel more like a unit, because nobody likes to be told what to do all the time with no input. So I'm going to tell you a couple examples going through these principles, very simple, how we applied it in our family. And communication, I also think, is probably the hardest of these steps because it's hard. It's hard when you're two different people and you have two different mindsets and you have two different communication styles. We have trauma that we're dealing with. We had triggers that we're dealing with, high emotions. And so my husband and I, after going through all these different coachings, we realized like we need to talk more and we need to learn how to fight better. We need to learn how to make decisions better and not get so defensive. So we started talking a lot, and it's not like a 1 week check-in, like, okay, how do we do this week? What are we gonna change? No, it's like daily. And it was, this happened. Okay, how are we gonna deal with it? And sometimes at night we would hash it out for hours when the kids are in bed and try and figure it out. So communication. So the example I'm gonna give first is shoes. So got 6 people in a house, got lots of shoes. They were ages 7 to 3 at this time, our kids. And so we talked about it and we made a decision. We're gonna be a household that doesn't wear shoes inside the house. Okay, decision. Now we share that expectation with the kids. Hey, when you come in, take your shoes off and put it on the rack, right? And we have these little baskets. They're mini shoes fit in because they're so small. And then after you repeat that hundreds of times, right? Because they're kids and you take off your shoes, take off your shoes, take off your shoes. It becomes a habit. Every time they come in, they take off their shoes. But you have to adapt, right? Their feet got bigger. Their shoes no longer fit in those little baskets. So we bought the shoe rack, and the new ritual was put your shoes on the shoe rack. And that worked pretty well until they were playing hide and seek and they stood on the shoe rack and broke the shoe rack. So then we iterated again. Okay, well, what do we need to do? Let's move the shoes to the garage. Let's give each of the kids their own shelf because their feet are getting bigger again and they won't fight about where their shoes are and get them lost. So third iteration, we moved the shoes to the garage. I wanted to give one more example. So another example is chores. So my husband and I are like, we got to get the kids to help us out. We're doing too much. So we decided we're going to do chores. So we tell the kids, we expect you to clean your room. This is what it looks like to clean your room. We do it with them. We show them this is a clean room. And every week or two, we're like, hey, go clean your rooms. But you always got to get a curveball and you got to iterate. We find out my youngest has ADHD, which is why it was so hard for him to clean his room. So we need to still have the same expectation. Please clean your room. But for our ADHD child, we can't just expect him to go do that like the other 3 who can do it independently. We need to break it down to baby steps or give him more time, and we have to adapt. So the expectation stays the same, but sometimes the path to get there is different, and that applies to work as well. Okay, so doing all these things creates shared language in families and in any group, in your working group, in your team. But I want to give you a really good example of shared language, and then we're going to do a game. And I want you to also think about shared languages that you have. So I had just married my second husband and we were at a family event. We were playing games and it was getting kind of late and somebody was laughing and they were like, oh, it's muffin time. And I look over and I'm like, what is muffin time? So they have to tell me the joke. So there's 2 muffins baking in the oven and one turns to the other muffin and is like, oh man, it's hot in here. And the other muffin turns to that one and is like, oh my gosh, it's a talking muffin. And the joke is, or the reason it's shared language is if you laugh at that joke, then it's muffin time, right? Because it's ridiculous. So now you all know what muffin time is and you're part of this shared language. Okay, so we're going to do a little guessing game and I want audience participation. I'm going to flash some phrases, my family phrases up here and see if you can guess what that shared language is. I think some you will and some you probably won't, and I'll tell you the stories behind them. Okay, this is the first one. Lid flush wash lights. You guess? Yeah, the bathroom steps. I don't know why I didn't think you had to teach kids this, like they just figure it out. But when we got married 4.5 years ago, it was like lid flush wash lights. 4.5 years ago, and we're still doing this. This is what I mean, a long game, right? Even with your work teams, it takes a long time sometimes. Yeah, I'm tired of saying this, but we even like printed out and put it on the door once because I got sick of saying it, but it didn't work. You still have to say it. Okay, don't waste the goodness. Any ideas what that could mean?
Something food related. Yeah.
Good, food related? Yeah. So exactly. So it means don't waste your food. So the story is we got peaches. My kids love peaches in the summer. And the younger son left some of the flesh, on the pit. And my older son was like, don't waste the goodness. And we all love them. So it's like, yeah, don't waste that. So now this is just kind of a funny thing. Don't waste the goodness. Okay, NBD. I like that one. That's not ours, but I like that one.
No big deal.
No big deal. Yeah. You have an accident, you drop something, something happens. So to minimize the reaction, no big deal, guys. NVD. Okay, champions. Any guesses on this one? Food related? I can't. Yes. Finishing dinner? These are really good guesses. I like it. So I don't think anybody would actually guess this one. So again, we got married, our kids were little. Our little 3-year-old comes into the bedroom asking for something and he's still developing speech. And we're like, what do you want? He's pointing his cute little chubby finger like, what do you want? So we lift him up and he points at the pistachios. So pistachios are champions. Okay, this is the last one. If you have to choose between being right or being wrong, choose. What do you think? Do you think the answer is?
Right, always.
Right? Winning the relationship? These are really good. In our family, it's kind. And as our kids have gotten older and developed, this is a newer one for us because they're fighting about what we feel are insignificant things. They're a big deal to them. But we're just trying to teach them to be kind. Think of the other person's perspective. And if you focus less on just being right, you can be kind. Okay, so those are examples of shared language that came from all of these steps, right? We applied these principles over and over and over in our family in many different ways. We created these shared languages, and it creates unity and consistency and a sense of belonging. So this is my family. It's not the ideal one that I showed made by AI, but this is my real family. And it's messy and we're still working on things, but it's better and we're more unified. All right, so let's get into a work example. How can we apply these to work? So I'm going to give you a case study of a component library. So when I was hired by Adobe, I still do work on it as well as other things, the product Frame.io. And Frame.io was originally a post video production product that video editors and also like big movie production companies would use. It's now used a lot more for other things as well, different kind of assets and collaboration. I'm going to play you a video so that you can get a feel for what Frame.io is and also see how beautiful it is because I helped create, the components and design for this. So we're really proud of how beautiful it is, my team.
Wow, all eyes on me, bounce. It's about to get real loud. Big smile say cheese, wow. The man on the beat, wow. All eyes on me, bounce. It's about to get real loud. Big smile say cheese, wow. Say cheese, wow. What? Crazy.
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. It's a cool product. So I work for the design system team that supports Frame.io, and our team is called Vapor. And Vapor we have a director. When we had at our peak, we had 4 engineers and 4 designers. And I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into the web and iOS component libraries. That's where we're going to talk about those 5 principles. So when I got hired, I was working with both the iOS and the web libraries. We had a lead designer working on the web library and a different designer who is leading the iOS library. And because I was supporting both, I was working in both libraries with both designers. And I started to realize there were these gaps. They weren't always built the same. The way that they wanted them built or named wasn't always the same. And they were both great, really talented designers. Nothing was wrong with they were doing, it was just different. And as somebody kind of in the middle and who was new and trying to figure it out, I noticed this gap. And I thought, you know what? This gap is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to create shared language. And that can be establishing our best practices, aligning with code, how we support properties, name them, order them, what we do with swaps, and then also just how they look. So when designers come into them, they look similar. So we had this vision of creating, like getting rid of that gap and creating them more consistent. And that's that concept of that unity and consistency even within in our library. So I'm going to talk about how we apply the 5 principles to this process of a refactored iOS library to bring them more in sync. Again, so this is not like checkbox step by step. I'm going to kind of tell you how it all evolved and some of the different principles that were used. But it's really organic, and these kind of things do just have to evolve. So first thing is I sat down with the lead designer on the web library. I just started asking him questions, and we started writing it down. Hey, like, how do you do this? What decisions have you made? You know, why did you make that decision? What do you think are best practices? So we talked about it, and we typed things out. And we started to kind of make some decisions. Hey, I think this is worthwhile. We should do this. Then we moved on to actually making a plan. So we went and talked to our manager, and we said, hey, this is what we're thinking. We think it would be a really worthwhile project, be a lot of benefits from it. We told him some of the decisions that we'd made. And then he asked us, okay, well, how long do you think this will take? Can you create some sort of roadmap and timeline for me? So we created a project, and then we created like sub-tasks underneath that, divided out and tried to figure out, guesstimate how long it would take while we're also doing all of our other projects. And then my favorite part, we got to work with code. So on the website, it was much easier to see the code, but for iOS, we needed to get into Xcode. And so the iOS engineer was awesome. He got us all set up. He would explain things. There was a little bit of a learning curve to see how things were named and read through the curve or the code. And so we also created the Slack channel so that we could like talk really quickly, make quick decisions, or I could ask quick questions about where to find this or what did this mean. So we had communication, we would make decisions pretty quickly, but we also realized we need a weekly meeting. So that's the ritual piece. We established a weekly meeting so that we could talk about harder things that you couldn't just get in, like Slack. And then I think probably the most complicated piece, because all these others were like 2 to 3 people, was bringing the broader team. And so we needed to let the whole iOS team know that we were doing this, how it would affect them, we would still support their other needs, and also keep them updated on the statuses. So we have our communication. And did you need to tell me something? I should be. Is it not sharing?
Sorry.
No, you're good. How do we check?
Share screen.
Oh, okay.
Should show the option to share the screen. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Says sharing.
If it can't be done, I can do it in post.
Oh, okay.
And doesn't click it.
Okay.
That's, no.
Sorry to the people watching. Okay. We're good. Oops. Okay, so we had to bring in the broader team and let them know what was going on. And so we also had Slack channels for them, and we wanted everything to come through one place. So originally requests were coming sometimes through DMs, they were coming through like reviews, they were coming through Airtable, and it was hard to keep track of all of them. So we had to streamline that. Like, here's the requests, here's the projects where everybody can see them, kind of set those expectations, also set expectations about how much work we could do, both our normal projects and also this. And so we set up weekly meetings for that. And then we also iterated if something wasn't working for the team and they're like, we can't find this, we don't know what's going on. We'd make sure that we found a way that everybody could know what's going on and get status updates. And then this did create some extra weekly meetings, but they were really useful meetings. So we set up weekly meetings to meet with the engineer. We set up weekly meetings in my team to keep the status updated. And then we had a weekly meeting to interface with the other team just to make sure we didn't disrupt any of their work and if they had any questions for us. And then last thing is just to keep everything nice and clean within our file. We had every single page that we were working on. So it was documented as a ticket, but then we also marked them with little green emojis so that we'd know what was done. And every page had a checklist. So originally we were only 2 designers working on it, but we brought in the other 2 designers. They hadn't been through all the decision making. We need to bring that to speed. And so we just made a checklist. It was like, hey, every page do this, 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 and this, right? We'd know it was done. So a few of the very specific, I'm gonna go over 3 very specific decisions that we made and kind of talk about how those happened, because I just give you a broad overview of the project, but here's some specifics. So something like semantic naming. As I'm going through both libraries and even sometimes in just one library, we would see things naming, and this could be in tokens, it could be components, it could be like pieces of components or swaps. It'd be negative versus error, or positive and success, notice, warning, informative, info. And I saw this multiple times. So I just documented in that decisions document, took a Slack to the team. I was like, hey, I'm seeing these used differently. Is there a preferred one? So there was, and we documented that, and then it was a decision, right? So we're talking about like you communicate, then you make a decision. So that was put in a document where everybody could see. The expectation is that we follow the documentation, and then we clean it up and have one way to do it. The second one is properties. So one of the questions that we were asking is, how should we name properties? And we really wanted to align as close as we could with code, but we also really wanted to respect native capabilities. So kind of like I was talking about my kids, right? You have the same expectation, clean your room, but we had to do things differently for the different kids and my ADHD child and the other kids. I feel like that's kind of relatable to like web versus iOS. iOS has some very specific built-in things. We want to respect both platforms, but keep them close as we could. So something like icon before in web, we just use leading icon in iOS, and they're pretty close, but they're not exactly the same, and that's okay. And then how should we order props? So this is another thing. We want to keep our libraries really consistent. This is an example my coworker put together to show other people how we do it. And so it's like we always have the different kind of properties in these orders. So it doesn't matter which library you're in, which component, they're in these same orders. And then one that we had to iterate on was avatars. So on the right side, this was our first pass at doing it. So we looked at the code and we built these exactly like we saw in code. And it turned out that when the designers went to use it in practice, our consuming designers, it wasn't working for them. It wasn't easy to flip through the different avatars, and it was pretty complicated. And we want to make it easy for designers in design tools and easy for developers in developer tools. So even though this matched code really well, we worked with the designers, we did tests, we experimented with different ways we could do it and found the optimal way for our designers to make sure it was easy for them to use in Figma. And so we finished the project. Our goal was to do, I think it took us over 6 months, half a year, but we finished at the very end of 2024. And we met our vision. So these are actual pages from our component libraries. And then shortly after that, there's a little reorganization. So whereas before we had an iOS team and we had a web team, the iOS team would use the iOS library and contribute to it, and the web team was working pretty separately. Well, this reorganization, now they're expecting designers to work across both platforms. So I felt like that came at the perfect timing. We finished our project. Now they're having to work across both libraries. So they're not going to go in and be confused because we have a shared language. Because if you've ever tried to go in and explore a new design system, there's a learning curve. And if they're totally different, that's even harder. So now we had a shared language and we created that unity and consistency. So there's going to actually, like, the benefits are going to speed up their workflow. There's not going to be so many things that aren't the same. It's aligned to code. There were things that were lived in code that didn't live in design, or vice versa. And that's all been cleaned up.